I tried the ketogenic diet for 1 full year as a registered dietitian, ending up in this. But I'm not here to bash the keto diet. In reality, the weight gain didn't have anything to do with keto. I actually made an extremely common nutrition mistake that was the real cause of my weight gain. And when I fixed that one problem, losing the weight I had gained on keto suddenly became very easy. And I went from this to this. The best part is that process of losing weight completely changed the course of my career because it was the catalyst of developing my own unique approach to fat loss. I developed a comprehensive blueprint for my health goals that didn't really require me to cut out carbs ever again. And only then did I start to look, feel, and perform like an athlete inside and outside of the gym. Today, I'm taking you behind the scenes of my experience on keto, explaining how keto works, what I did wrong that caused me to gain weight, and how I finally lost the weight and kept it off. Plus, I'm going to explain whether you should consider keto if you're trying to do the same. So make sure you keep watching. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Andres Ayesta. I'm a registered dietitian who helps busy parents and professionals reach their fat loss goals. With my one-on-one clients, I coach them through a step-by-step fat loss and lifestyle transformation process called the Nutrition Blueprint Method. But one thing that's important to know about me is that I am what I like to call a diet agnostic, meaning I'm here to support you no matter what your preferred dietary lifestyle is. Nutrition is completely personal, so my role as a dietitian is to give you the most up-to-date evidence-based nutrition information and help you find something that works for you, but it's ultimately up to you, the decision that you want to make in terms of what is going to be most optimal for you. That's why today I'm going to talk more about the ketogenic diet and share my experiences as someone who tried this diet for an entire year. Now, I'm not trying to convince you that you should or shouldn't do keto. I'm honestly just here to give you key information about this diet so you can make the best choices for your health. This is especially important when it comes to keto because it's gained so much popularity over the past few years.
Another hot trend is the ketogenic diet, which emphasizes fats over carbs and sugar.
There is also scientific evidence that it shows it can help treat type 2 diabetes and epilepsy.
And as a result, there's a lot of misinformation that's being floating around online about it. I'm also going to mention that the carnivore diet is similar in nature with ketogenic diets, except all forms of vegetables are removed in a carnivore dietary approach. It's important for me to point that out because I think carnivore has been taking off a lot more in the past year. That said, I want to start off with a bit of a disclaimer that keto is a very vast and complex topic, and there's a lot that we could cover. So for this video, I'm just going to focus on the basics. And if you have more specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them in the comment section or in a follow-up video, or make sure you check out our social media channels at Andres Ayesta on Instagram and Andres the Dietitian on TikTok if you just want to react or go in there and drop your questions or engage in some of our other pieces of content. Now let's get into today's video. To start, I want to give you a brief overview of what the ketogenic diet is and how it works. Keto is basically a very high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet. Fats make up about 70 to 80% of your total calories in this diet, and typically carb intake is limited to less than 50 grams per day. Protein intake tends to be moderate on the keto diet, making up around 20 to 25% of your daily calories, although this may vary. By keeping your protein intake at this level, you're able to support muscle maintenance and other body processes that require protein. Foods that are emphasized in the ketogenic diet include things like meat, fish, eggs, full-fat dairy products, oils, non-starchy vegetables such as leafy green, broccoli, cauliflower, nuts, seeds, and low-carb fruits, in some cases such as berries. Some more other extreme forms of keto will even go as far as cutting out all fruits and vegetables, and this is also known as the carnivore diet that I mentioned earlier. Again, I have personally seen it has exploded in social media in the past year. When it comes to weight loss, the premise of keto is that if you limit the sources of carbs in your diet, that would be foods like grains, starchy vegetables, higher sugar fruits, basically anything with carbs in it, or particularly with added or natural sugar, your body will start to switch the main source of fuel that it uses to function. Normally, glucose is used as a main source of energy for all the cells in your body, but when your body is deprived of glucose, which comes from the carbohydrates that you consume through your diet, the body begins to break down fat stores into something called ketone bodies or ketones, which can be used as an alternative fuel source by your brain cells and also the rest of your body cells. When ketones start to raise and accumulate in your blood or rise to a specific level, this is known as a state of ketosis, and that's the state you're trying to reach by following this diet. Now, I personally experienced a state of ketosis, and people think of this as a state of mental clarity. You have more energy, your appetite is more balanced, but I feel like that tends to be overhyped in my opinion, and I will share why I think that is in a minute. Now that you have a general idea what keto is and the science behind it, you might be wondering whether it actually works for weight loss, specifically when we try to compare them to other diets. Research around low-carb diets in comparison to low-fat diets, for example, is very controversial, but it tends to show that low-carb diets are not really more effective for overall weight loss long-term compared to low-fat diets. For context, a low-fat diet is one where less than 30% of your total calories are coming from fat. These have been used more commonly for weight reduction and fat loss for years, and why they're usually used as a comparison. These diets, in contrast with ketogenic diets, tend to be higher in carbohydrates, which usually it's more than 40% of your total calories. Let's look at some of this research. Now, I'm not going to go and cherry pick specific things. I'm going to look at something known as a meta-analysis, which is a compendium of research studies and looking at the results that they found across the board on all those studies, and try to make sure that they pick studies that are similar in nature. So let me explain this one right here for you. This one is a meta-analysis of 32 randomized feeding control trials. Randomized control trials are gold standards in research. This analysis looked at studies that compared low-carb and low-fat diets. Now, in all these studies, they were giving people the food to eat instead of leaving them up to them, which is a problem that I typically tend to see in studies that show positive results, especially when they're gearing more towards a low-carb or low-fat diet, regardless of what it is. Now, these studies were also controlled for calories and protein, which is another important factor to consider in this type of studies. What they found was that overall, people in low-fat diets actually tended to lose a bit more weight compared to those in low-carb diets. The differences were super small though. The main conclusion here that they had was that regardless of the diet type, when calories and protein are equal, both can help you lose weight. So this means, for example, that if you consume 1500 calories on keto and 1500 calories on a non-keto approach, both of them can be conducive to weight loss. So if keto can help some people lose weight, why didn't it work for me? And why did I end up gaining 15 pounds during the year that I spent doing keto? Well, it comes down to a very important concept that many people miss when they start many diet programs that cut out large groups of food, and that is that calories matter. When I was doing keto, well, I simply had a lot of keto-friendly foods. High fat, low carb, moderate protein items like those I mentioned earlier. So why did I gain the weight? Well, despite consuming less than 50 grams of carbohydrate each day, one day I realized that I was consuming upwards of 3,000 calories every day. Fat is very calorie dense, and I was simply eating a lot of high fat foods. So people started to react to some of these videos I have made about this experience, and they said, well, you were just doing dirty keto, which is just a slang term used to describe a ketogenic diet that is just not prioritizing dietary quality and just eating a lot of foods that are high in fat, pretty much bacon, cheese, and lots of meat and things like that. And I can see I was doing this, but to an extent. The big takeaway from my experience is that keto is not some kind of magic pill when it comes to weight loss. Even if you follow the rules of the diet, it doesn't mean you're going to lose weight, because the reality is that all diets, including keto, work in the same way. The only way to lose weight is by creating a calorie deficit, meaning you eat less energy than what you're burning over a period of time. I wasn't paying attention to calories. I wasn't really creating a calorie deficit, and so I didn't really lose weight, nor maintain. Simple as that. And in this case, I was actually eating in a calorie surplus, so I was consuming more calories than my body was burning, and that led to that weight gain. It wasn't that the keto diet didn't work for me. It was that I wasn't following one of the basic principles of weight loss, which is actually a basic law of thermodynamics that some people on social media these days are starting to refute. This means they think that the law of physics do not apply to the human body, which is, to me, simply nonsense. Really, all diets work in the same way and serve as a calorie management strategy, and some are better than others to help you achieve that state. When it comes to keto, there are two main ways that this diet can be helpful for calorie management. The first is appetite suppression. High fat and moderate protein meals tend to be more satiating than higher carbohydrate meals. By minimizing your carbohydrate intake, the keto diet probably helps you stabilize your blood sugar levels and reduce insulin spikes. And this can help prevent rapid fluctuations in blood sugar and insulin, which are often associated with increased hunger and cravings for sugary and high carbohydrate foods. The second way is that when you start keto, suddenly a lot of foods that people typically overeat are now off limits. Things like chips and desserts that people find it challenging to consume in moderation are cut out completely. And for many people, this complete restriction makes it easier for them to control their food intake. Say you're someone who comes home from work and grabs a handful of chips and you end up finishing up the entire bag. If chips are no longer part of your diet as a rule, that's a whole lot of calories that you're cutting out. I think this is what happened to me, is the fact that now in the diet industry, specifically the diet wellness industry, there's so many products that now are low carb, keto friendly, but these foods or this specific type of brand sometimes come out with very higher calorie items, but they're just low carb. And I think I was eating a lot of those options too. You can have like this dark chocolate, like low carb, sugar free, all this stuff, but it ends up being like 400 calories in one little bar. You see the point that I'm trying to make here? Now, one of the major concerns that I have with keto is, I think, long-term sustainability. In terms of long-term effects, the research is less conclusive, with some findings indicating that weight loss peaks at about 5 months, but is often not sustained. Now, in my 12 years working with clients as a dietitian, I have seen people who do sustain keto long-term. I've also supported clients transitioning off of keto to a more balanced nutrition plan, and sustaining weight loss that they've seen on keto was very, very doable. And probably a situation I've seen most often is people coming to me because they tried keto and it worked for them at first, but then they gained all the weight back. If you want to avoid being in that last group, there are a few screening questions you need to ask yourself first before jumping into a ketogenic diet or even a carnivore diet, now that we're talking about these type of low carb approaches. Question number 1 is, do you love carbs? Carbohydrates or carbohydrate foods are a huge part of an enjoyable diet for you. Cutting them out altogether is going to be restrictive and very unsustainable. You may be able to do it for a few weeks, but if you feel like you're suffering and depriving yourself, you're probably going to give up and possibly binge on carbs at some point, or you're going to gain the weight back up when you're done. And here's the reality. Carbs are more likely not the problem in your struggles with weight, but a combination of lifestyle and nutrition habits that can change while still including carbs in your diet. Question number 2 is, do you have a strong knowledge foundation of nutrition? I always say keto is an advanced nutrition strategy. It might have benefits for some people, but can create a lot of issues, particularly if someone implements it without an understanding of nutrition or without the support of a nutrition professional. Most people do not even understand how the body works before jumping into this, and in my professional opinion and expertise, this is simply not a long-term solution, specifically for that group of people. Question number 3, do you have a poor relationship with food or your body? If you struggle with disordered eating, the keto diet, or any type of restrictive diet, for all it's worth, it's likely to make the problem worse. Question number 4, do you see yourself doing it for at least 6 months? I call this a 6-month diet test. If the diet would feel too restricted to stay on it for 6 months, it's not the diet for you. And here's another bonus question. Do you have a medical condition that research indicates you could benefit from a ketogenic approach or a ketogenic diet? Or there's been a lot of promising results using ketogenic diets for certain medical conditions, with the management, for example, of epilepsy and other neurological conditions. The brain conditions are typically the ones that have been the most studied for ketogenic diets. Now, there is some data to show that ketogenic diets can also be helpful with people with metabolic syndrome, aka people with prediabetes, insulin resistance, then glycogen storage diseases, PCOS, diabetes, and some cancers. Now, I'm not going to get into the research and all these different conditions because that's beyond the scope of this video. But if you have any of these conditions, maybe talking with a dietitian and also with your physician, specifically people with experience working with patients on the ketogenic diet, may be a step that you may want to consider. Now, to finish out today's video, I want to go back to my own experience with the keto diet and what I did next. So at that point, I've been on keto for a year. I think this is back in 2017. This is literally before like keto was even like mainstream. It was just starting to get picked up. Now, I gained over 15 pounds, and honestly, I was feeling pretty bad every time I look in the mirror. I was not feeling great. I decided I needed to do something different that was going to be sustainable for me. I was about to turn 30. I was going on a trip with my now wife to Mexico. So I went back to the drawing board. I stopped doing keto. I said, stop this. And I started counting my macros to create more awareness around the food that I was consuming. I even hired a nutrition coach and dietitian to help me be accountable. I believe coaches need coaches. And when I did this, I was able to eat all the foods that I loved, not restrict anything, and I was still able to lose the weight. That's when things really started coming together for me. Using my experience working with high-level athletes early in my career, and actually at that time I was doing this, I designed a method that combined the principles of sports nutrition with the science of habit change, along with my passions for mindset, psychology, and breathwork. And I put this into action in my own life. And in 2 months, I lost all the weight that I gained, and I was feeling and performing better than ever. And since then, I have taught the same fat loss formula, which I call the Nutrition Blueprint Method, to hundreds of one-on-one coaching clients, and it has completely changed their lives as well. Take Sophie, for example, who is a marketing expert in California. She lost 30 pounds in less than 6 months and never gained the weight back. And she was one of those people that did keto and a bunch of other fat diets in the past and was never able to sustain that. Then there's Heidi. She's a military spouse, and a mom of a 2-year-old who recently lost 15 pounds and reignited her love for fitness during her time in the program. And finally, Tom, who is a busy executive who was convinced keto was the way to go for him. And the moment we started to introduce carbs again, he dropped 12 pounds easily, even with a very busy travel schedule. This system is so powerful, and I've seen it work over and over again. So I know it can work for you too. If you want to learn more about our coaching program and get started on your journey to lose 15 to 30 pounds over the next 16 weeks, you can go to planusnutrition.com/application just to see if you qualify. But that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope this gave you some insight into how keto really works so you can make an informed choice about whether it could work for you. And most importantly, I want to emphasize that if you're struggling with weight loss, keto or other restrictive diets like it are not the only way to reach your goals. There are other ways to go about this, and that's what this channel is all about. So make sure that if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button, and can't wait to see you back here for another video again soon. Take care.